Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Sunday Morning Quarterback. It is great to see you. The summer is here. We are back. Took a little bit of a mission break, a little pastoral break. Adam down there in Richmond, but we are back. Adam, how is the weather today in Richmond, Virginia?
It's hot and muggy. We had our hottest day of the year yesterday, and had a great Father's Day with the kids at the pool after I preached. But yeah, it's beautiful here, man. Beautiful part of the country.
Nice. You look like you're working on that pastoral tan. And Dad coming in with the baseball cap, coming in from his
baseball. No.
Basketball.
Come on, the star.
Sorry. It's coming in from
football. Don't get it. Yeah, don't get that.
Coming
it's
in
only one.
And in from his pool house living room. Dad, how's things going in Nashville today?
Things going good. We need some rain. We got some rain, but I'm ready for the sunshine.
Yeah, ready for sunshine, man. Summer is in full effect. We took a few weeks off to go on vacation. Dad, we've been in Ecuador for 7 days, getting all the stomach sickness, but man, it was worth it. But you know what, man? I've missed this. It's been a good little break, but it's time to jump back in the saddle, boys. We've had a lot of sports going on. So let's start off the NBA Finals. We were traveling during all that, but we know we were watching it. So let's talk about NBA playoff reaction. Adam, we'll start with you. The Nuggets dominated. Joker dominated. He's ascending. What was your takeaways from all that?
Yeah, as we were, texting back and forth, the only thing I kept thinking was this has been the weirdest playoffs in recent memory. And that's not only because of who won the championship, but just the way everything kind of worked out. You had injuries for contending teams. You had, guys that have run the league for 10 or 15 years, and Durant and LeBron and Curry with teams that you thought could win a championship but didn't. But I'm happy for Denver and for the Denver Nuggets. I love seeing small market teams win. I like seeing teams that can build through the draft and not, rely on this free agent age that we're in, do something. So that's been good. And then you got the Joker, who has cemented himself as an all-time great big man. And I feel like even though everyone's acknowledging that, people still are like, they feel weird saying it because he's such an unorthodox player. Like I told you guys when we text, I think he's the most unmarketable player the NBA has ever had because he's, everyone has been using terms like he's clunky. He doesn't look like he's, knows what he's doing out there, but somehow that ball always goes in the hoop. And he's able to make it work. He's a big man, so people don't relate to that usually. He's European, so he's not a white American guy. He's not athletic, but, he is what he is. He's a great player, and I'm happy for the Denver Nuggets and for him.
Good take. Dad, what'd you think?
I got to agree wholeheartedly with Adam. It was a wild season, wild playoffs, and I loved every minute. As a matter of fact, not only just me, but my wife, Pam, she was right there watching it, calling games, and we'd go back and forth. And so we had a good time watching it, but to watch Milwaukee get booted out in the first round by a team that barely made it in, and that team goes to the finals. And, then you have all the big dudes, they go out, a lot of people are saying, okay, Golden State's going to turn it on, but the people that really understood the game,
Adam said that all season.
There was only a few guys that drank that Kool-Aid, but we won't name no names. We're not that type of shit.
Kind of like the Bengals Kool-Aid in football season.
Yeah, because Joe, I know you picked the Denver Nuggets to win the championship, right?
Yeah,
hey, that's right. You go back.
Yeah,
I think right. Something like that.
He picked the Suns.
I said something or maybe thought it, but anyways, it wasn't Golden State. But it was kind of fun to watch Golden State come up, people get excited, and then drop back down. And then the Lakers come up, and then, the way they got ousted. But it all culminated to Denver. And I think at the end of it, it was just a great Cinderella story that we've been watching for a few years. And to see it culminate with a championship and with just a humble superstar, just so humble. And it's going to be interesting to see because, you have a center now win the MVP last couple years, two different centers. And so it seemed like the big man is coming back again. But it's changed a little bit, kind of like what Curry did with a shooting guard. Now you got a point guard, draining threes, and now everybody's doing threes. It's going to be interesting to see if the centers continue to pivot into more of a point guard center, or a center that understands the importance and value of being down low, seeing everything, and just pinpointing passes. So I think you're going to have more of that style coming into the NBA. But at the end of the day, it was just so good to see somebody work hard and a team stay together. They don't go out, bring in superstars. They grew together and finally fulfilled their ultimate dream with a championship.
I think it's funny because you're seeing the LeBron effect with Joker. So if you think back to LeBron's first chip, he had all the accolades and MVPs, but then when he finally won his first ring, it's like he leveled up, like in Mario Super Bros. Like, boop, boop, boop. And then you've been having all this talk about Joker, MVPs, great. But now that he got that ring, it's like people are like, oh, he's in the Kevin Durant era now, and he's in that rare space, all from one chip because he stuck it out. And so I think it's fascinating that you got Phoenix, who's trying to buy a team, which we'll talk about that here in a minute, but they're doing the exact opposite of what got Utah there. And so they got all the young guns and they got the pieces, the horses to keep it going. But let's also point out, man, I don't think Utah is like one of the best, championship. I don't think Denver's one of the best, championship teams we've seen. But, man, they didn't have any struggle. I mean, look at they won 4-1, 4-1, 4-2, 4-1. I mean, they didn't really have a challenge. I don't know if that's because of injuries or, Giannis and the Bucks were a little bit injured, not having Middleton back. And so the question next year is going to be, can they keep it going? And let's transition to Phoenix, because Phoenix just got ragdolled by Denver. So yesterday it came down that Phoenix picked up Bradley Beal, trading away Chris Paul, which I think we all saw he was declining. But now you've got you got four superstars. You got Ayton, you got Durant, you got Beal, and then you got Booker. So you got four studs, but you have no bench. And so that's the question. And if you look at the amount of super teams that Durant has been on right now, I mean, he's like on his fifth or sixth super team. And so I feel like they're going in the opposite direction of where the NBA and the European League and the game is going. So that's going to be something to watch. Can they get a bench? Now, they're going to be the new Miami, Golden State, where the veterans are going to ring chase and going to want to go there. That'll be the thing to watch. Also, side note, something that happened very quietly was swept under the rug. Bob Myers, or the GM at Golden State's out. Mike Dunleavy's in. And so over the next few weeks, we're going to see, did they keep Draymond? Did they keep Clay? Did they keep some of their young guns? Or who do they move? And I think he's going to try to make an imprint. I think he's going to try to do something. At the end of the day, he's probably going to go with whatever Kerr wants to do. But with the Beal move and Golden State in flux and the Lakers trying to, maybe get Kyrie out there, there's a lot of interesting storylines. And while I enjoyed the NBA season this year, I think the offseason is going to be just as entertaining as the playoffs. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously Phoenix, like you said, they're trying to buy a ring. And, as much as people may not like that or agree with it, it doesn't mean they're not going to be able to do it, because Kevin Durant is who he is. We saw what Devin Booker's able to do the last few years. Remember the Suns were in the finals just a few years ago without, Kevin Durant. And so now they've got Beal, they've got Durant. And I think, like you said, they just got to fill out that roster. And I think there'll be some veterans who come in and take the minimum. But now, here's something that's kind of getting lost. I'm interested to see, and I know he's rarely healthy, but where is CP3 going to go? Because I think he's either going to end up for one of the LA teams, or he might go to Milwaukee. So that'll be interesting.
That's what I would do. But yeah, I think he's just going to be the Homer LA. Clippers, they said they might try to approach him for a reunion there. I don't know if I see that working. Dad, what do you think?
I think Kevin Durant is definitely after another ring. I think Booker took huge strides last year in the playoffs. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they fill it out. If they keep their big center, or if they move on, which I think they probably should move on. But one thing I think was interesting is that they moved off their coach.
Yeah.
And, we talked about Denver, how they have kind of kept the main pieces and allowed them to grow and mature. And even with Joker, it's not like Joker was, he's been great, won the MVP the last 2 years, but you still saw him blossom. And so it takes time to reach your full potential. And I think we're able to all see that happen together, and even with coaching. And so I think them losing Monty Williams is actually going to hurt a little bit, because I think there's got to be some continuity between your stars and your coach. And that was where, I think Monty really excelled. And so starting over with that coaching philosophy, I think it's going to be interesting. They do have, great superstars, so I think they can overcome that. But just to go out and purchase and bring everybody together, we've seen that happen the last few years, and it rarely works. So, but I think Durant really wants another one, and he wants to prove people, and Booker wants him to have it. And so I think they're going to really be hungry.
I'll say this. Durant better win a ring in Phoenix, because if he doesn't, his legacy, all that Golden State stuff is going to hold true until his dying day. That's just a reality. He's got to win a ring.
Did you guys?
And I think he knows that. I think he knows that.
I don't feel like Vogel fits, though. I mean, in one hand, Vogel's a defensive guy, and that wasn't Durant's pick. Now, we know that he can manage a ship because he did it with the Lakers, but I almost feel like they're going to do whatever they want on offense, and then he's going to try to motivate them on defense. But, Adam, you're talking about they went to a finals a few years ago. That whole team's gone. I mean, if you look at the whole bench and the whole nucleus, and it's all gone. I mean, they don't have a lot of that identity. And it's weird. It's like the teams, look at Brooklyn a few years ago. They had all this good stuff, culture, all of that. And then you trade it for superstars, and you regress, because that continuity, the same thing that Denver has, you trade it for a superstar. And it's just, I don't know. That coaching hire has the owner all over it, because that was not Booker and Durant's first choice, with no offense to Frank Vogel. But the one thing somebody did point out is they said Frank Vogel did a good job of getting the most out of Roy Hibbert during that Indiana era. So can he do the same thing with DeAndre Ayton? Which the only good thing about this super team is that they were all very selfless. I mean, Bradley Beal, very selfless. And I was shocked to hear he was only 28. I thought he was in his mid-30s for whatever reason. He's still fairly young. And so him and Booker's still young. And, I actually think this could help Durant, because he's kind of on the back end of his prime. And as his health begins to go down, he can kind of, be a hired gun, but rely on the young bucks to really carry the weight. And so, and Beal's a good two-way player.
I have a question for you guys. If Miami gets Dillard, does that take them to number one? Can they get back to the finals with him, with Dame?
Yeah, I think so. With a healthy team, of course. Yeah, I think Damian Lillard, man, he's an all-world player.
Oh yeah,
and absolutely, particularly because the East is weaker than the West. I think absolutely.
If I was LA though, I'd send Anthony Davis on his way and try to pair him up with LeBron, because you already know that's not going to work. That's what I do. I could see he's from Washington. I could see him wanting to stay out west, but who knows if he'll wave that flag? Chauncey Billups is there trying to create culture, and who knows? That'll be interesting. But Pat Riley's going to do something. As much as we all love playoff Jimmy, he showed that he's not quite good enough to be the number one to get you to a championship. He just doesn't have enough, and they need to move off Tyler Hero too. And they were an overachiever too, kind of like that year they made it in the bubble. I just I don't know. Next year I wouldn't be shocked if halfway through the season they're in like 9th place. And then this is what they do. It's what they do. But hey, let's shift gears. Go.
Let me just say this.
Yeah.
You heard it here first. Watch out for Dame going to Milwaukee.
Ooh, that would be sick. I'd love that. That'd be sick.
Well, they tried to get Beal and they couldn't do it. And so if they can pair him up with a Greek freak, watch out.
Well, they'll send Middleton and they got a few good pieces. So, they said they're trying to move on from him. But Adam, we got a lot of Bravo fans out there. Why don't you give us a Braves update? And then, Dad, you give us a MLB update. What are you seeing? What are you watching? as we're in full on baseball season now?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite times of year. You get to go to the beach, you get to sit out in the sun, go enjoy the water. In the middle of June is when the Atlanta Braves are just on a roll, and they have been on a roll once again. The reason I say that, I feel like it's a flashback from the past like 4 years. The Braves have, I think, the second best record in all of baseball, and they're doing that without our ace pitcher, Max Fried. Our hitters are hitting. Uh, I think we're also doing better because we have Ronald Acuna Jr., we have Ozzie Albies, and a few other speedsters, and because they widen the bases, they're stealing bases left and right, and we're just a volume hitting team. We get a lot of hits. We don't have like, one or two guys that can hit. Got a lot of hitters on the team, so we're putting up a lot of runs, and I'm excited, man. It's good. It's good to be a Braves fan during this era.
Nice. Dad, what are you seeing in the rest of the major leagues?
Well, it's interesting because some of the big guns are faltering right now. You have the Yankees faltering, Dodgers. Dodgers are always, right up there, but they've kind of lost some steam this year. I think, like I said a couple months ago, I think they may be getting, a great batter and a great hitter from Cali here at some point. But you have teams like Baltimore playing really good right now, which I'm excited to see. But I want to shift to, well, one other team to kind of keep a watch out is the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks, they win kind of like the Florida teams. They'll win and then they're gone for 10 years. Then all of a sudden they show back up again. So it's going to be interesting to see if the power teams can right the ship. Teams like Houston. Houston's in number 3. They started off gangbusters and they're down to number 3 in their division. They got a lot of people hurt, but I think that they'll rise back. Houston's always there. But will one of these teams, Cincinnati or Diamondbacks, or even somebody like Baltimore, catch the wave and just keep it going? Because a lot of times these small market teams will catch a wave and they'll fizzle out. But will one just catch that wave and keep it going? But also, it's been interesting to hear so much about the Oakland A's leaving. I mean, it's all over the news. But when you look at the Oakland A's, they've been bottom dwellers for I don't know how long. So my question is, if they go to Las Vegas, are they going to try to do a shift and move away from the Moneyball concept into, hey, we're in Vegas now, let's produce a winner and go ahead and spend some money? So it's going to be interesting to see. I know that's a little ways away, but there's so much talk about what's going on with Oakland and Las Vegas. And Las Vegas is such that it's city. It'll be fun to see if they can shift things and bring a winner to Vegas in the next couple of years.
That's interesting too, because the Valley, Phoenix is pretty hot. Like, I mean, literally hot. But I mean, that's a growing space, and so it's interesting that Phoenix is willing to lose a team over that. But definitely something to keep an eye on.
Oakland.
Oakland. I'm sorry. Yeah. Talking about the Athletics. Yeah. So definitely something to be watching. We'll keep up with our baseball updates. Now, one of the good things about off season is it gives time to reflect on nostalgia. And being the Sunday morning quarterback, we always can talk about football. And so I wanted to do this question. We've done it in NBA and we've done a few other ones, but we haven't ever done one on quarterbacks. So, Dad, I'm going to start with you. Now, at first on its face, this was like, oh, this is easy. But then when you start thinking about old age versus new age, I saw Dan Orlovsky sharing his thoughts on this, and some of the people about fell off the table when he gave his thoughts. Which shout out Dan Orlovsky. We're going to get him on here one day because he's a strong Christian and a good football pundit. But anyway, Dad, here's the question. Who is your all-time quarterbacks on Mount Rushmore? Top 4. Go.
I was kind of like you guys, kind of thinking through all this, and I decided not to overthink it. And so at the end of the day, you got Tom Brady, you got Manning. They've got to be on every Mount Rushmore. And then, of course, you got to put Mahomes. He's already, you can kind of see where he's heading to. He's already got 2. He's the top face in the league. Just phenomenal. And the last but not least, I have to go back all the way to Mr. Johnny Unitas himself.
Whoa!
He was, oh yeah, yeah. If you know anything about Johnny, he was Mahomes, he was Brady, Manning. He was a gunslinger from way back before that even existed. But he played a lot of years, and he really transcended football, and he was a tremendous winner. Back in his day, the Colts were a juggernaut. So I think you have to start with Johnny Unitas and then broaden. And so that's my Mount Rushmore.
Man, doggy, turn it into Mad Dog on here, Adam. Going old school.
Johnny, you man, was the man.
That's so.
And no Cowboys. No
wow,
Cowboys.
yeah.
No Cowboys. I tried to be fair.
That is it.
I wanted to put Aikman on there, but you know.
Nah, you got to go Roger Dodger if you do one. That is it. So Tom, is that in order? Tom, Peyton, Pat, and then Johnny. Is that your order?
No, that's not in order. That's not in order.
Okay, you have an order for us?
Yeah. I think that's the order. I think that's the order.
Okay.
I put Mahomes at 3 right now. Manning was, just so cerebral, and so I need a little bit more from Mahomes. I can see him going to number 2, but not yet.
All right, Adam, quarterback Mount Rushmore, go.
Well, obviously Tom Brady's in the number 1 spot. Not going to say anything about that. In my number 2 spot, going back to what Joe just said, I have got Mahomes. And the reason that I've got Mahomes there is he's already won 2 rings. He's probably maybe halfway through his career, and shows all signs of winning at least another, if not several more rings. When I look at Peyton Manning's career, and I love Peyton Manning, as a guy, I loved watching him, not as a Colts fan or anything. Just think most people who just love football loved watching Peyton Manning play. But when I look at his career, I see a lot of coming up short throughout the playoffs, not being able to beat Brady. And, you can say a lot about the records and the stats, but the bottom line is this. He only won 1 Super Bowl ring where he was clearly a great quarterback. And I would say the one with Denver, and maybe it's because it hurt me so bad against my Panthers. He barely could throw the football. We picked him off twice in the Super Bowl. That Denver Broncos defense drug him to that ring, and maybe he deserved it, because he had a lot of bad teams around him all throughout the year. So I've got Mahomes. I just wanted to say that about Manning. I've also got Montana. Can't leave him out for what he did with the 80s and everything. There's not much needs to be said about that. And then lastly, I've got a man with the last name Young, Bryce Young.
Oh, get out of here!
Oh my God!
Get out of here! The outlier.
The outlier. No,
my gosh!
In all seriousness, I've got a Steve Young. You can't argue against
Steve Young.
Steve Young.
Get out of here!
Young. You Cowboy fans can take that.
Gosh. Hey, he was a backup most of his career.
3 Super Bowl rings, man. MVPs.
How many?
He's got a few MVPs, and doesn't he have how many Super Bowl rings?
1.
Just
you know
one?
why?
Okay.
This team right here kept him out.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, man.
Oh.
Wow, you just did that. Oh, wow. Steve, man, Dad, he's going to lose his football card for that one for a while. Man, when did he turn into a Niners homer? What a dog.
Oh, my gosh.
So here's
I'll give him Montana.
Hold on. Young has 3 Super Bowl rings.
Who?
Young.
Yeah, 2 of them were because he was backup to Montana. He only won 1, San Diego.
See, this is before I was. This was before I was.
This is when he was a wee little lad.
Yeah, I tried to throw 1 or 2 old guys in there, but
he's not old. I watched that.
Hey, Joe, you're old.
Oh man, come on.
If you're older than me, you're old.
So mine was like you guys. TB12 number 1. Probably Mahomes too, just because he's eclipsing so quick, and we'll talk about him and Tom Brady. You got to put the one I was stuck on is, do you go Elway or do you go Montana? And Montana's got the rings, and he's like the original GOAT, so I would lean Montana. But here's my question: let's talk about this for a second. Is Is LeBron to Jordan currently what we're seeing with Mahomes to Brady? Does LeBron have a better shot, even though he's on the back end, of catching Jordan, or does Mahomes have a better shot on the prime of catching Brady? What does he got to do to get there? Is it going to be because he's racking up the MVPs and he's racking up the yards. Is it the long game? Is it the chips that he's got to at least get in the vicinity of? Dad, what's he got to do to get to Tom?
I think he needs at least 2 more. At least. If he can get to 5, if he can get to 5 with all that he's able to do, I think he can be. I think he can get to a point where it's like Michael and LeBron. It's going to be hard to pass him because Brady's played so long and does have so many championships. It's going to be hard, but I think he can at least get to the point where he's like the Michael and LeBron. I don't know if he can pass him. A lot of good things has got to happen for you to win a championship. And so, to project, that's difficult. But can he catch him right now? Yeah, because he's still young. Especially if he plays another 13 years.
Yeah. I think if he plays even just another 10 years at near the level he's been playing at, he can pass Brady. And here's the thing. It's like, there isn't a hard set of rules that says clearly Brady is better or Mahomes is better. It's just public opinion in large part. But I think Mahomes can reach that. And here's the main reason why. Everybody loves Michael Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Pistons fans, that's the only group of people that would say, I don't like Michael Jordan. Whereas a lot of people don't like LeBron James. And a lot of people don't like Tom Brady, and there's different reasons why that is. But I think Mahomes is a far more likable guy, and he plays in the middle of the country for a team that, they're not in the Northeast where there's all these kind of divisional rivalries that are hot. I think Mahomes could do that in the public opinion, at least.
If he can get in that 4 to 5 ring vicinity, his talent, everybody's going to be like, Mahomes is clearly more talented, and he's an all-world talent. Probably going to, what do they say, John Elway or Dan Marino, the best thrower of the ball. He's going to be in that conversation. So if he can get in that, 4 to 5 ring era, then they might do what Michael did to Russell. Even though Russell's got the rings, well, Michael's peak was higher than Brady's, and so that one will be a fun one. But the fact that Tom beat Pat in a Super Bowl, and we've got that footage, is always going to be there, even though he didn't have a line, and even though it was the defense of the Bucs. That is a chink in the armor. And I remember Tony Romo saying, I don't know if he can ever surpass him if he loses to him in Super Bowl. So that will definitely be something.
I think a difference could be with Brady. He played 20 years, so he's got 7 rings, but all of them were fairly spread out. I think if Mahomes, like if he were to win next year or maybe a couple times in the next handful of years and just say, hey, he dominated that 5 years in the NFL, we've never seen that before, that could pedestal him up.
Let me throw one thing that could hurt him. Is I think that we're in that golden age of quarterbacks once again, as it was in the 80s. Well, with Tom, there was him and there was Peyton, and he also had his coach, and so I think Peyton was always hit hard because of that defense. And so I think you got some great quarterbacks that are really coming of age, at least in the AFC, other than Dak in the NFC. But I think moving forward, I think it's going to be a race to see who can get to those championships because you got some good quarterback play. So that will be interesting to see if he can be as steady to those championship games and even the Super Bowl with these good quarterbacks really coming of age as well.
Nothing like some good nostalgic football talk. Hey, let's shift gears to ministry and leadership and things we're really passionate about. And so, guys, this next topic started out with just something I've kind of been thinking over in a conversation that I had with just some friends. And we were talking about how a lot of times in ministry and in leadership, everybody wants the perfect leader. And if you deduce it down, there's 3 categories or 3 buckets, we can call them, at least in the ministry lane, that are very apparent and you have to have in order to typically be successful. And the buckets I'm going to talk about, most people typically don't have all three of the buckets filled. And so here's the first bucket. The first bucket is the character / integrity / ministry bucket. And what I mean by that is when you have this bucket checked, means you are a great person. You have a true heart for the Lord. And as much as we don't like to think it, there are people out there that are very talented and very skilled. And just to be honest with you, they don't always check the integrity box. And so the first one you have to start with is character, integrity. And when we say ministry touch, do they have a good feel for ministry? Do they have a good ministry philosophy that's kind of birthed in their heart? And so that's the first bucket, and I think we'd all say that that's the most important. Then the second bucket that people rush to the most is talent or charisma. Maybe in ministry, you'll see a lot of people that are really good preachers or good ministry builders, are good at relationships, or good at the stuff that's giftedness or just raw talent. And then the third bucket is the administration bucket, or the organization or structure, or somebody that's good with laying things out or building a system. And the reason why I want to talk about these three buckets is because I think there's a lot of parallels to what we do and then leadership in the public sector. Most of the time, what's going to happen is you are not going to find somebody that checks all three buckets. You're either going to have a person that has great character and integrity, but maybe they're a little less skilled or less talented, but they're pretty structured and they can hold their own. Or sometimes you will have people that are steady eddies and they're structured and they're always going to be there on time and they have great heart and a great character, but maybe the talent isn't there. Or sometimes in churches, people are wooed by the talent and they're wooed by the high capacity leadership and the structure, but the character and integrity isn't there. And then churches, Lord bless them, they think, fully developed leaders just grow on trees. And, if you hire somebody at a full-time salary, that boom, they're just supposed to have all that. Or sometimes in churches, it's a common thing now for churches to not be able to afford full-time people and they have to have part-time people. And then they expect the part-time people to be able to check off all these boxes. And so I wanted to have a conversation about how we as pastors and leaders can be well-rounded, but also as church leaders, how we should approach this. And before I hand it off to you guys, I heard one pastor say this. He said his three buckets that he was constantly thinking of as a senior pastor was one, bucket number one, a husband and a dad. And he's two, a preacher, a preaching bucket, and three, leadership bucket. And his words were, I don't feel like in my ministry I learned how to do all three well. I could either be an A+ dad and an A+ preacher and a B+ leader, or the times in my life where I was an A+ preacher and an A+ leader, I was a B+ dad, or vice versa. And so I don't know, this is something that we're seeing a lot in churches and seeing a lot in personal leadership. So Dad, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on this from a church perspective and from a personal leadership perspective on how we can become more well-rounded?
Well, I think we all would value the character first. One of the things that I try to do constantly is to truly, truly be self-aware. So many times we just go right into ministry and we just do. And that can be a trap for ministers where we just roll up our sleeves and get going. And you've heard me say this before, and it's something that I say often because it's always at the forefront of my mind, is to make sure that ministry does not become an idol. And it was something that became apparent to me early on in ministry, and where it was, just trying to climb up the ladder, trying to be around guys that, were names. And there was a time when I realized that what people see on the stage wasn't necessarily who they were behind the stage, which caused me to really begin to evaluate my life. And so I am constantly evaluating and adjusting spiritually, even through my character. So, and at the same time, to make sure that ministry is not an idol, because I will focus where I'm at when I'm evaluating myself spiritually on the things that I'm doing. And so that was another thing that I had to learn, that the ministry is secondary. And I'll go back to the whole Mary Martha. There are times when, we have to serve and to go the extra mile and lay it out on the table. And then there's times when we just have to sit with Jesus. And we know that Jesus valued sitting in front of him more than anything else. So for me, I have a propensity of going, and thinking I'm okay, and not spending the amount of time that I need to spend with Jesus, and evaluating my motives on why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. Because there's a trap that can happen, particularly in the American church. And you noticed this, Joseph, when we were in Ecuador. We were around small churches everywhere, and the last thing that they're thinking about is growing these mega churches. They just don't think that way, because they don't have the resources, they don't have the talent, they don't have talent, book wise, on what we can do to grow something like that, or even the desire. Their true desire is to grow and mature people in Christ, and to share the greatest news one can ever know is Jesus. And so that's something that I'm constantly looking at my motives, looking at, is it an idol, and am I putting the amount of time into spending time with Jesus, putting myself at the feet of Jesus. And when that's happening, then ministry becomes something that's just very easy and fluid, and the gifts that God has given me are able to be utilized properly.
Adam?
So there's a few things as I think about this, just like Joe said, being aware of who you are, that takes time. Like we said, no one wakes up and, you just hire a new guy that's got it all figured out and does everything great. The same's true when you walk in as the minister. You have to realize, there are some things I might do well, but there's other things that I don't do great, and I need to work on those. So that goes to my first thing I would say, is that understand your weaknesses, but here's the key: work on them. Maybe find that tension of saying, and this is something I'm constantly learning myself, is find that tension of saying, I know that I'm not great at this, I'll never be one of the best at this, but I still need to improve in this. And that balance of saying, being content with that reality, but also that, that drive to get better. So whatever those weaknesses are, acknowledge them and work on them, which is often hard to do. We always want to default to what comes natural to us, and what may give us recognition or feel good or feel right. But there are things in ministry that you have to lean into. I'll tell you one of the earliest ones for me that became, I'm an introvert by nature. So the idea of being a pastor, when I first learned that stunned me and shocked me and scared me, because I was just thinking, like, Lord, the public speaking aside, walking into a room and just having to like flip that switch, that wasn't natural to me. That's something I had to like lean into. And so what I would do is I was hang around with guys that did that well, and just learn how to do that and maneuver in that setting. And I can do that now. I can walk in and just like that, I can go around and shake hands and talk to people. But that's not something that was natural for me when I first got started in ministry. And just kind of as a follow-up word on that, once you understand your weaknesses, to the best of your ability, surround yourself with people that make up for those weaknesses. Like, there are people on our staff at church that do things so well that I don't do well, and it makes me all the more grateful for them and willing to ask them, and then of course delegate things to them so that they can lead it. So to the best of your ability, if you can, whether it's staff members or deacons or just co-laborers in any kind of ministry setting, surround yourself with people that do things well that you don't. I think that's true, like you said, in the public sector. I know presidents often will do that. People, high-ranking CEOs and COOs of companies, they'll just say, hey, there's areas I need other people around me to speak to, because it's not my expertise.
Yeah. Dad, that's one of the things I think I've learned, I think, the most from you, because America, I'll tell you, my dad doesn't own a laptop. He's never put a sermon together on a laptop before. If you took away most pastors' laptops, they would be like dead in the water. And so you're not a very tech savvy person. You come a long way, but tech is a challenge at times, but you're always good at putting a team together around you that could make up for that. And a pastor leader who I will leave unnamed because of some of his various views that are out there wrote a book, and he talked about the 90-10 rule. And he talked about how as leaders, only we can do the top 10% of our calling. So for you guys, 90% of what you do, other people can do, but there's that top 10% for us. For you guys, it's preaching the word and leading and vision and all that. And then there's the other 90% that maybe you're not as skilled at. But the whole thought is that 90% is somebody else's 10%. And so I think it goes back to, sometimes two churches get in tough spots because maybe they have the wrong people in the wrong seats on the bus, that some of these buckets aren't checked, and they have them in positions that require an organized person or an admin person, and they're just not that. But they have the gift and the talent of charisma and building culture and all these things. And so I think sometimes that's where the conflict comes in, because they want them to be something that they're not. So yes, you need to, work on your weaknesses and balance yourself out. But for the typical church person out there that's on a committee to find a youth pastor, like, Adam, your church just got a new youth pastor, or a worship pastor, or a senior pastor, they have these expectations that there's this perfect person out there, and most people are not going to be able to check off all three buckets, especially at a lot of times churches will say, well, we want this position, but we only want to pay part-time, or you get what you pay for. And even at that, even when you do have a full-time person, they're not going to be the, Peter or Paul probably were not all three buckets. They needed the other disciples to balance them out and bring some of that too. And so anyway, just a good discussion on perspective.
Let me add something to that. There's a little phrase in 1 Timothy 4, Paul's writing to the young pastoral protege. And there's a little phrase that you don't often hear talked about because there's a lot of other great, meaty things that surround it. As Paul is writing to Timothy, he tells him a lot of things. He says, immerse yourself in the scripture, read the scripture, preach the scripture, and live in accordance with the scripture so that your life is, an evidence to those around you. But at the end of verse 15, it says, and mind you, this is a young pastor. It says, so that your progress may be seen by all. Here's what that means. If you're in a loving church where they trust the pastor, they understand everything we just said. Like when our church brought in me, I was 32 years old, and there's people, if you're a young guy going into ministry, you're going to soon be pastoring people who are twice your age, sometimes as much as 3 times your age. And the great churches will love you, but I think they'll also realize, this guy's going to grow even as he's leading us. And if you're in a church like that, that's God's blessings in your life. And I'm in a church like that, and I'm thankful for it.
That's good. Dad, any final thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, just do most what you do best. And like Adam says, try to get better, but also know that you have some weaknesses. And I will say, for the young pastor out there, fight against the insecurities where we judge ourselves against other people. We all have very unique gifts. God has very unique places for us to lead, and he knows exactly who we are. And at the end of the day, it's his ministry, not ours. And so as long as we are faithful and obedient, and we're, giving some time to look inward, you've got to constantly looking at why you're doing the things that you're doing, and stay blameless unto the Lord and give God your best. And then what Charles Stanley used to say, leave the results up to him. And then I think people can have good, nice, long tenures at churches, giving all that you can unto the Lord, but knowing that it's his power, not our power.
Good. Well, hey, it's fun time to be in church. We got VBS coming up. That's the season. We got summer activities. We got summer baseball. So we will be back in 2 weeks, fellas. Good catching up. Everybody have a great day.